every day. From the minute we wake, we can choose to be mad at the world, or we can choose to have compassion. We can choose, to have a good day. We can choose to be, angry, or, I mean, it's just always a choice. We can choose to get out of bed. We can choose to stay in bed. I mean, it's always a choice.
Always a choice.
Yeah, always. Yeah. Really, everything that we do is a choice. And when you think about it that way, when you become the empowered one, so that we're empowering ourselves, right? To become who we want to be. We get to paint the picture. We get to write the next chapter. And it's all in the words that we say.
Bryan's very happy about this conversation.
You got to accentuate the positive.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. It's always wonderful to be with you again. And gee, we're nearly at the end of the year, coming up to Christmas 2020. What an amazing year it has been. I have the gorgeous Paige Lee to chat with on the show today. I was going to say introduce you to, but Paige has done so many podcast shows. You've probably met Paige before. Welcome to the show, Paige.
Thank you, Karen. It's so good to be here. I'm really happy. Thank you.
An amazing story. And please remember, if you're liking the shows, enjoying the conversations, to share and subscribe and press that like button and all that good stuff. And put a comment, with the comments and the liking. You know why people say this on all their podcast shows? Because the algorithms on any of the platforms, the more you like shows and comments, it actually helps the algorithms share the shows. That's why we all harass you to put, share and like and all that sort of stuff. Subscribe. Anyway, let me read your bio and we'll get into your story. It's a story of awakening. Paige and I were just talking about the book Awakened by Death that Cyrus and I put out a couple of years ago. And Paige's awakening story came through that very way, as did mine with the death of Mum 1,000 years ago. Okay, Paige Lee's spiritual awakening happened abruptly after the death of her 23-year-old son, Bryan, who was killed in September 2008. As the only world she ever knew shattered, a new world opened. A world filled with hope, connection with spirit and love. A world that allowed her to continue her relationship with Bryan and opened her to her true sense of being. Paige is driven to help people who are struggling to release their fears, negative blocks, and diminish their belief systems about who they think they are. She wishes to remind you of your true nature and that you are a beautiful, shining soul filled with love and light. That when you let go of the paradigms that you have held, you prisoner in your grief and fear, limiting your ability to thrive, you can live a life filled with peace, abundance, joy, and purpose, even after the most tragic circumstances. Her book, Choose to Believe, was born from the pact she made with her son Bryan after his death, to share their story and to help others overcome the profound grief the death of a loved one can cause. Today, Paige is an author, speaker, certified grief coach and healer, trained in Reiki and pranic healing, a former Helping Parents Heal affiliate director. She now serves as a caring listener for the organisation. Paige lives with her husband, Dwayne, on a small acreage near Boise, Idaho, where she puts her passion for nature and gardening to good use. You must have a beautiful garden, Paige.
Well, just flowers. So I am not a vegetable garden. Most people, when you hear garden, they think of vegetables. I love flowers. So I do have many, many flowers.
Oh, beautiful. All righty. Well, let's get into your story. And what happened?
Yes. So Bryan was my only living child. And then my husband has 2 children. So we were a family of 5. We were a blended family of 5. And Bryan had gone to college in California, and he was murdered while he was there. He had finished 1 degree, was in the process of finishing his 2nd degree at the film school there at USC. And he was murdered one night while walking home from the bar with 2 friends. And then that was when it all began, was really that morning at that 5 a.m. phone call that I received from his friend saying, Bryan was in a fight. He's in the hospital. They won't tell me anything. Can you try to find out and call me back? And of course, with all the privacy laws that, they wouldn't tell me anything because Bryan was an of age adult, and they wouldn't tell me anything. And then later that morning, maybe in the next hour, the dean of student affairs at USC called me and he said, well, I'm calling. I have news about your son, Bryan. And I said, oh, I know he was, hurt and taken to the hospital. What do you know? And he goes, oh, so your son has died. And I'm like, no, I didn't know that, and screamed. And, and that was when it all began. So it was 12 years ago, which is shocking to me, to be honest with you, that it was 12 years ago, because I never thought I would survive a day or a week or a month or a year or 5 years. And now here it is 12 years later. So there is no time, there is no space, and yet some days can feel like so much time. And then you look back on time and it seems like yesterday. So, it's hard to make sense of it all sometimes.
During those first days, I know, like when you're in the grief, you're not really present to signs around you. But looking back now that you've awakened, was there signs from Bryan going on that you remember?
In the early days?
Yeah, like right after he
well, there was the dream from my grandma 3 weeks before he died. And that's how my book begins, is with that dream, kind of warning my soul that it was time. It was time. This is what we talked about. This is what we planned for. It's coming. Mm-hmm. And of course, I didn't understand what any of that meant at the time. But looking back, it was like, oh gosh, I get it. She was warning me. And then hearing Bryan audibly call out my name 3 weeks after he died was what really set everything in motion. In the 3 weeks prior to him, no, I would have to say I really don't remember anything that I would have been considered a sign, because I was so just devastated, and we had to go to LA and we had to deal with, the university officials and all of that, which, it was just, and then funeral arrangements. So I think, well, you may remember from losing your mom that you just don't remember much of anything. It's just, you're just dealing with detail after detail, trying to take care of what you need to take care of, to take care of them. Because in those early days, it's all about, I want to do the best I can do for him. And even like picking up the casket was incredibly hard. I just wanted nothing but the best, for him. Nothing was good enough for him. Right. So it's just all those little decisions that have to be made. And I think those things and the deep, deep grief cloud us. I think it's a gray cloud that we wear. And I think it is more difficult for them to come through anyway. Well,
it is, and they knock themselves out to give us signs, and
they do.
And we, like I remember a relative dying in New Zealand. I mean, I was totally awake. This was only about, 7 years ago. And she was flickering the lights, and televisions were turning off and on. Like, she was actually, before she died, her husband died a couple of years before, and he was turning off and on televisions, and the cat was doing strange things. There was so many signs. But you have to be present to them. And I know in your grief, you just think, God, the cat's strange, or what's going on with the lights? You don't actually think that that's a sign at the time. That's why I say looking back. So what was the dream? Your grandmother, tell us more about that.
It was my recollection of it is very brief, but I'm sure the difference between a dream and a dream visit. At the time, I didn't have any idea what it was. But all I remembered was I awoke the next morning, and I remember I was seated at grandma's feet. She was seated in a chair, and I was like on the floor with my arms up on her knee, I guess, that kind of an image. I was an adult, she was her beautiful self. My grandma was so beautiful, the most beautiful skin and long silver gray hair that she brushed out every night, would brush out her hair. And that was exactly how she appeared. She was wearing a long white, gown, flowing gown, very angelic. And she looked at me and she said, she put her hand on my shoulder, I believe. And she said, "It's okay. You'll be with us soon." And that's all I remembered. And so I woke up the next morning, and it's just so vivid in my mind. And I thought I was going to die. I really did. And I thought, oh my gosh, my grandma's telling me it's my time. And so because I was so it was so real that I knew it, even though I knew nothing, I knew that it wasn't just a dream, right? Because it was so real. I knew that she had visited me. So I started to get my affairs in order, and made a list of things that my husband would need to know and just all of that stuff. And then turned out then, of course, that I wasn't the one that died. It was Bryan that died. So I do believe in soul planning and all of these things. And I know that Bryan and I planned this together. And I've been told by spirit, even as recently as yesterday, that it has been much harder than I thought it would be. And I acknowledge that, and they acknowledge that. It's like this whole journey has been much harder than I thought it would be. And, but yet, we planned it together. And so I honor that. And when I learned about that component and that piece of it, that made the healing much easier, because it's like, I have to honor the choice that we made. We planned this together, and we planned that I would be here and you would be there, and we would work together and we would help other people. And so of course I have to honor that. And so that has helped a little bit make my journey. I know I'm jumping way ahead, but that has helped make the journey a little bit easier. And then after he died, when he called out to me that first time, then all the things that you were talking about started happening. So in that like third and fourth week, that's when the TV would come on and off, and we all played iPods at that time. I don't even know if anybody has an iPod anymore, but iPod would start and stop, and all the lights would flicker and go on and off, and all these crazy things would happen. And that was when all that started. So I think I was just telling my group last night that I work with, that it's almost like, we open one door and spirit's like, oh, good. All right. She cracked that door open. So we're going to go a little deeper. And all right, she cracked that open. And now we're going to go a little deeper. And the more we allow and receive, the more they give us.
Absolutely. Ever expanding journey of awareness in every sense of the word, not just with our dead relatives, but with our connection to our own soul, with our connection to our spiritual team, who could be comprised of dead, relatives, but it can be a whole gang, a whole mob of ascended masters and angels and ETs and spirit guides. It can be a whole mob. But ever expanding journey of awareness. Okay, so let's hear about when you first started thinking about spirituality, because the thing about death, I remember chatting with Elisa Medhus, who was brought up by militant atheists, she said. So spirituality was never something she ever thought about. And if she did, she was like, yeah, I'll get around to thinking about that one day. I'm too busy with 5 kids and a medical practice. But when her son died, she started really thinking about it, like, where do you go when you die? Not a question most people think of really until death visits them, like, where do you go? And I thought, where do you go? And if you go somewhere, then we've come from that place. So where is that?
Yeah.
What's going on with you?
I was raised, I have a chapter in the book that talks about, kind of religion versus spirituality, because I was raised Presbyterian, but really for my family, what that meant was dressing us up at Easter, with the dresses and the gloves and the little purses, and, marching us all off to Sunday school. And, there would be 3 or 4 times a year where we would get kind of dressed up and, marched off to Sunday school. But that was really kind of it. There wasn't talk about God in our home, not in a nice way anyway. I was raised by alcoholic parents, and it just was not a part of our being. We were exposed to church, we were exposed to religion. My only belief prior to Bryan dying, I did believe in God. I didn't know what that meant, but I did believe in a God. And I believed that heaven, I believed that, when we die, we go to heaven, this place up there, you know what I mean? That we can't touch it. We can't see it. We can't feel it, but it's there. And that's where all my people are going to go if they do a good, if they're good here and if they behave themselves. And so that was all I knew. So when Bryan died, I was pretty overcome with, I was just like, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And when I heard him call out to me, Mom, just out loud with my ears, I was up and I'm like running. I'm like, where are you? Where I heard you. And I've never doubted that I heard him out loud with my ears, because it's harder to doubt that than when you hear something in meditation, which is how I usually receive. But when you hear it out loud with your ears, you heard what you heard, right? So anyhow, I was off and running and determined to find him. And I made a vow to him at that time that I would find him, because I was so afraid of a life without him. And I think that was really my driving force, was how in the world am I going to live without him? And who am I now? What am I going to be now for the rest of my life? Because I'm still here for some reason. And if I'm not his mom, what in the world am I going to be? Who am I? So it was a lot of where are you? And it was a lot of who am I and what is my purpose now? And those two questions drove me, kind of a 2-lane road to the same destinations. And the path was laid out to me magically and mysteriously, and exactly what I needed at the right time, as spirit does, right? They give us what we need at the right time that we need it. And so thankfully, every opportunity, to my knowledge, every opportunity that was presented to me, I said yes. I said, yes, I will do that. Yes, I will go here. Yes, I will do that. And so the answer to your question is, it became a spiritual journey immediately for me. And I'm so blessed and thankful that the journey was presented to me, because the pathway that I followed was all spirit giving me what I needed to get the next answer. And so I became a seeker of all things spiritual. I became a seeker of everything that I didn't understand, which you may have heard me say, I understood nothing. So that was a lot. That was a lot that I needed to learn. And it's been a tremendous journey. And as you know, the journey never ends. We're always evolving and becoming and learning. And, just the other day, Bryan told me that I need to ground myself more, and I need to spend more time in conscious connection with him. And I'm like, okay, all right, I hear you, because it's easy to get distracted. And he really he's doing his part, and I need to do my part, which I am, but he would like me to do more. So
Yep.
I will.
I'm hearing you, Bryan. I've gotten the same message lately.
Yeah, right. I think that we're all kind of being asked to step up, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. I know it's that identity, talking about who am I, that is such a potent part of our spiritual journey, because we're so identified with our human lives. Like, I'm the mother, I'm the wife, I'm the sister, I'm the executive, I'm the whatever, we're so identified with who we think we are as this human journey. And our spiritual journey is really asking us to identify with, I'm infinite creative potential, I'm none of it and all of it, like to identify outside of the roles that we play as humans. And so it's interesting. Maybe if you'd had a career, you could have thrown yourself into your career and identified with that. But
I actually did have a career. I was a real estate broker.
Oh, okay.
But I just walked away. So I think I did say everything was about him, right? So everything in his life was about him, and you're right. And it was always about, when can I see him again? And when can I bring him home, or can I go to him? It just was always that way. And I was always so connected to him, that maybe because he was my only living child, and it was just, he was my everything. He was my world. And I know any parent can relate to that with their children. And so I did have a career, but I just dropped it. I just gave all my pending deals to my partner, my friend, and she just took care of everything. And I stayed home, and I drank wine, and I played the music from the funeral, and I organized all of the photos, and I scanned all the pictures, and I had all the little DVD tapes that we had done of videotaping put onto DVD, actual discs, so that I would have them forever. And that's how I spent my time.
Yeah.
And I became panicked to leave the house. And the one time I did led me to a woman who invited me to a psychic message circle at her home. And so I went to that, and then everything broke really wide open, because I was like, wait a minute, he knew the names of the boys that were on the street corner with Bryan. He knew all of these things. How could that even be possible? I knew nothing about mediums or psychics prior to that night. And I immediately signed up for psychic development classes from him, and started to learn to open up my own intuition. So, and that was October, November, December. That was 4 months after Bryan died. So,
wow.
Yeah, it all happened quickly.
Accelerated journey. And, your book is called Choose to Believe. And I wanted to talk to you today because I talk so much about beliefs. on this show. And I really believe that all these stories that people share like yours, and just like I was telling you, someone had reached out to me this morning through the ATP Facebook page saying that her best friend had died and that put her on her spiritual journey. It's because we need to transform the beliefs around death that cause so much pain, and I asked my mob years ago, what causes the most, how can I help, and what causes the most amount of pain, and how can I address that? And they said to me, well, death causes the most amount of pain because you believe that you're separate and you believe you've lost someone. So that's what causes the most amount of pain on this planet. And I'm like, okay, right. Yeah. So
beautiful.
Yeah, we need to transform those beliefs around death and what it is to die and grieve and all that sort of thing, which is exactly what your journey has been about and still about and more about. It's funny listening to you and how your whole world, when I've listened to other people's shows too, when you have that sacred contract or sacred agreement with another soul that you'd work together, there is this incredible bond between you, no matter what relationship you have, mother or son, or is an amazing bond that keeps you asking questions after they're gone. Like those questions like keep us on that spiritual path rather than asking, then just giving up and saying, oh, life's hopeless.
I agree. And I was relentless about it. I just was not going to stop. I read every book I could on the afterlife. I watched videos. I mean, it just, I was going to find him. And really, a lot of people have asked me, like, what was the one thing for you? What was the one thing that really changed your journey? And hands down, it was meditation. I mean, meditation opened up everything for me, and it wasn't easy. And I didn't get there quickly with meditation, but I never gave up. And, you talk about beliefs, and I believed that I could do it if I just kept at it. I wasn't going to quit. And I just tried and tried and tried again, and one day had a breakthrough, and then another day you have another breakthrough, and so it goes, right? I was kind of a tough subject. I think it wasn't easy for them to get through to me, but now the relationship we have in some ways is better than what we had on earth. There is no judgment. There is no. He still teases me like he used to do here, which I love, and he'll kind of tousle my hair and kind of just like do things, but we at times could go head to head a little bit, and he doesn't do that with me now. So that's why I say in some ways our relationship is a little bit better, and I get to spend more time with him. He's with me all the time. He's not in California or Pakistan or all the places that he'd been.
Right. Absolutely. So many people reach out to me and ask, how can I meet my spirit guides? How can I be more connected to spirit? So tell me your journey. I know you did the course, but tell me let's go through how that looked for you. So you said meditation and persisting, so it's really about quietening the questioning mind so that you can actually hear them. But let's hear about your journey.
It is. Well, so I went to that, you want to know, so I went to the psychic message circle, and then I signed up for his classes, and I did go to see that medium for once a month for a year because he was my connection to Bryan. Because even though I was doing the classes, I didn't really necessarily believe that I could do it on my own, right? I knew that I was learning to do that, but I didn't really believe it yet. And so I saw him every month for a year, and then there was a point where in 2010, I went to the Sun Valley Wellness Festival here in Idaho, and helping my friend who had a booth there because she was an emerging, psychic medium. And in the process of doing that, I took a break to walk through the exhibit hall, and there was this booth, and it was a very boring booth. It didn't have anything interesting or enticing about it to draw me in. And so I just kind of kept ignoring it. But your attention just keeps getting pulled, and they're like, go talk to that man. It was exactly what they told me in the grocery store when I had run into the woman who had the psychic message circle at her home. Go talk to her. Nope. Go talk to her. No, I don't want to go talk to her. Go talk to her. And so I did. And she's like, how's Bryan? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I just fell apart. Well, this time go talk to the man. I'm like, no. And so I walked around the corner and I went to, explore other things and go talk to the man. No. So I went to this booth that was doing, discover your life purpose through your fingertips, which, by the way, was an amazing experience. The reading I got back from this woman was incredible. Anyhow, finally, they're like, go talk to the man. I'm like, fine, whatever, whatever. And so I did. And turns out he and his wife do a retreat for mothers who have children in spirit. And did I want more information about that? And you really can't make it up, right? It's just it cracks me up how I just love how spirit has guided me along the way. I'm so thankful for that and so grateful for that. So I did, and I was accepted because the woman who is now passed herself, her name is Sally Baldwin, and she's written many, many books, but she was a channel and a medium. And she had, I don't know, over 100 applications for this retreat. And she would channel each child and each mother's spirit, soul, and determine who was going to be the right mix of moms to attend this retreat. It was her second annual. And she said, Bryan would not leave me alone. He just would not leave me alone until I said, yes, Bryan, your mom is in. And so I was so lucky to be one of 7 moms to attend that retreat. And it was absolutely life-changing. And even though I'd already been working with David and all of the classes I'd taken, I knew nothing compared to what I learned that weekend in Sun Valley. Sally Baldwin was a beautiful, amazing spirit. She still guides me as well as she does the other moms in our group. We call ourselves the Sun Valley Moms. We're very active. We go to conference once a year together. We did prior to this year. And in fact, some of them and I are going to be putting together our first annual mom-child reunion next year. Super excited about that. So it's always been my dream to give back what Sally gave to us.
Right.
Her event was 100% paid for by a very generous soul. And I don't currently have that. So there may be cost involved, but we'll keep it as low as we can. So at that retreat, I learned about Reiki. I learned about spirit animals. We learned about the Michael teachings. We learned about pendulum and how to communicate with the pendulum. So many things. Plus, Sally herself was an amazing channel. And so we got both private readings and group readings from her.
Okay.
And
back up a bit. You said I learned about the Michael teachings. Do you want to talk?
Yes.
Are they the teachings that talk about soul age and
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Funnily enough, I reached out. We were discussing that in our inner sanctum on our online groups, and I can't remember what teacher brought it up, but Michael Tamura, who's an amazing spiritual teacher here on earth, incredible. He was speaking about that in our group at the beginning of the year, and I asked him to come on the show next year to expand on that. So what did you learn about them? How did the Michael teachings speak to you about who you are and what you're doing here? And
what I learned mostly about that, what I remember the most about the Michael teachings is that Bryan was a warrior, which he was. He was at West Point Military Academy. That was his first path, was to go do the military thing. So he had that warrior energy. He also had the energy of being a free spirit and that kind of tender energy. So it was, I can't remember the words, to be honest with you, the warrior and something else. He was a mix of two. And so it was a difficult path for him to be able to combine those two. My path is one of being a teacher, which, I think I've always known. And every reading that I've done, that is what comes out in that fingerprint reading, in my numerology charts and the Michael teachings. That's what it's about, is being a speaker, being a teacher, and just sharing, what it is that I know, that I've learned on the journey. So that was all really validating, really interesting. The Michael teachings, my friend in the group from Britain actually is much more well-versed on it than I am. And so it's kind of her expertise. And she will be presenting that at our retreat in October. And she also is the one that took very well to the pendulum teaching. I don't use any tools when I communicate with spirit. I just simply do it through meditation. Anyhow, so yeah. It was an amazing experience, and we learned a lot about each other. I think it was the first time that I really learned more about who I am as a soul, because that's really what this journey, the journey has led me not only to Bryan, but the journey has led me to who I am as a soul and who I am as my true self. And it's been, I haven't talked about this much in my interviews, but it's been such an interesting journey because I didn't even realize it, I don't think, until sometime this year. And I was able to see clearly how I really am fully walking my path right now. And that it feels so good because when I put the book out, I laid it all out there. I mean, there really is nothing that I've gone through that's not in the book. I was very honest, I was very open, and it was not easy to do that. It's not easy to put yourself, it's kind of like coming out, and I came out as a spiritual person. I came out as somebody who had considered suicide. I came out as somebody who says they can channel on occasion, as somebody who definitely says she can communicate with her child in spirit. And so that's a lot of stuff for some people to swallow, not for your audience, but, for a lot of people. And so that's all about authenticity. And I feel like this whole year has been about authenticity. And it's even interesting to me that I wanted to release my book in 2019, but a physical ailment prevented me from doing that. And so it didn't get published until this year in 2020. And I think it is about being authentic and becoming more of our true self. And for me, the book was the vehicle to finally do that and to stop being afraid of who I am, which is only going to help me to be able to live life more fully.
Absolutely, Paige, absolutely. I'm hearing so many things in what you're saying there. A new identity, we were talking about identity. You identified as being a wife and mother, and now you've got this new identity. I suppose you could add some things to your identity. You could say now channel, medium, psychic. It's funny how I had Jeff O'Driscoll on the show last year, a couple of years ago, who saw spirit and stuff as an emergency operator doctor. As an emergency doctor. And he used to see spirits and stuff. And I said to him, so you're a medium? And he goes, no. I said, so you're psychic? He goes, no. Like he's having this phenomena, but he never identified with those words as being who he is. And I'm like, you're talking to dead people. That's what mediums do. And he goes, oh, I guess I am a medium. It's a whole new identity, isn't it?
That is funny because I keep saying, well, I'm not a medium, but I'm intuitive.
So do you speak to other spirits besides Bryan or only Bryan?
I have in my private sessions, I tap into the spirit of the loved one who is with my client. Mm-hmm. And so I have tapped into that. I don't present myself as a medium. To me, that's just scary. There's a lot of responsibility. And I know how much I relied on my medium visits the first year that Bryan died. To me, it's almost like trying to present myself as a therapist, which I'm not either. So I want to present I want to give people the tools that they need. I definitely am sensitive to energy as an energy healer, sensitive to energy. Really, my kind of name is all about energy. But so I think that's my gift. My gift is tapping into the energy and the feelings, but not so much to be an evidential medium, although I have on occasion done that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, just talking about authenticity, I've got in my group, one of my participants is an amazing life coach. So I threw her in the hot seat and I said, okay, so we're going to put you in the hot seat this week and you're going to share your story. And what she ended up doing is just sharing all this amazing wisdom that she knows as a coach, right? But and I'm pushing her to share her story because you were talking about putting a book out and sharing your story and being authentic is really scary. And she was reticent to do it. And I kept pushing her. And I said, why do you think you keep going back into the information and you just totally just don't talk about yourself at all? And she thought about it and she went, wow. And this thought form arose that she said, I was always taught that you never air your dirty laundry. So speaking about yourself and what you've been through and the problems that you've been through is kind of just airing your dirty laundry, and you don't do that. And I thought, isn't that interesting that this is a come up? Because I think that a lot of people who have a story to share, they have beliefs and blocks around it. One of the biggest one is, what will people think of me?
Yeah,
That's the
right. Well,
biggest
because
one.
we've been ridiculed. I mean, the industry has been ridiculed. The industry has not been taken seriously for so long. I mean, for eons, right? I mean, they used to burn witches at the stake. So, I
Right.
mean, but I mean, so much has changed. I mean, thankfully, people like yourself and getting all of these amazing people out to, the knowledge, and it's just amazing how much it is changing. But it's still. And I do think it's easier. I've been amazed, let me put it that way, at the reactions, the positive,
Right.
loving, supportive reactions I'm getting from people who I never in a million years dreamed that they would say anything other than "you're crazy, lady." So
And
it's
that's been
been
the
nice.
overwhelming story from all the people I've interviewed, was when they've come out as someone who's, out of body, flying around the universe, talking to spirit guides, talking to dead people, whatever they're doing, talking to ETs. The overwhelming response has been a positive one, and support. And all those fears of what will people think of me, they'll think I'm crazy. I they just don't have any weight, because there will be some people that think you're crazy, and usually that's your family. Speaking of that, what did your husband think about your spiritual journey? Did he come with you? Like, what happened there? And how did he handle Bryan's exiting the matrix?
Yeah, so my husband is Bryan's stepdad. So Bryan's real dad, I don't really know. I don't think he believes in really any of this. He has not wanted to talk to me about it. In the early days, when I would get information, through David or through my own meditation, and Bryan would say, tell my dad this, and I would try, and it just was not. He would be like, okay, or I would email him the message and he would never email back. So, to each his own. My husband, who we married in 1998. So Bryan had been with us. He had been with Bryan and I should say, for 10 years when Bryan died, and they were very close. So my husband was angry. He just wanted to go, kill the guy, right? The guy that killed Bryan. Whereas I never really felt that anger. So I don't know if that's a male female thing, but that was his kind of immediate reaction. And he was all about just holding me up. This man is my rock. He really is. And I understand now that's also the pact that we had, was for him to come here to hold me up during this time. He is the one that has allowed me to not return to my career, to be able to follow this work, to get the certifications and the trainings that I've received, to be able to communicate with Bryan through other people, for that year that I needed to. And without him, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that, right? Or it would have been more difficult, I should say, because I would have, had to do it at night after a 9-to-5 job. And so he gave me the freedom to be able to pursue this journey with more leisure and, more relaxation. At first, he was not a believer. At first, he thought I was crazy, but he wouldn't say it. He was more worried about how much wine I was drinking, I think. And so, but over time, like, Bryan started sending messages that were directed at him, that clearly were messages for him. And finally, one day I said, don't you see, Bryan wants you to come along with me. And from that day forward, he has, and he supports me 1,000%. He's the one that turned me around a lot too, though, because probably 7 years into my journey, grief is a journey. It's a journey, and there's no destination at the end of it, right? It's just what we learn along the way and the tools we accumulate, how we process it, what we do with our grief. Are we going to use it for good for other people? Or are we going to let it shut us down? We have to become bigger than our story. Well, even though somebody like me and so many people that I know, we're putting one foot in front of the other and we're moving forward, and then it's 3 steps back. And so even 6 or 7 years into the journey, I would have days where I, was depressed and I just didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. And finally, one day he said to me, "You didn't die. You didn't die. Bryan died." My husband.
Your husband said that, right?
My husband. He says, Paige, you didn't die. Bryan died. And it's time to just start paying attention to us. And I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, and I was really angry with him. I was angry with him for saying that. And,
Wake up call.
after a short while, I was able to see, I was like, he's right. I have him. I have my beautiful, lovely children of my heart, stepchildren. I had a granddaughter. We now have 5, but there was just 1 at the time. And there's people that need me. And, it's grief is selfish. That's the other thing I say a lot of. Grief is so selfish. And I had 1 foot in this world and I had 1 foot in Bryan's world. And I didn't ever want to come out. I wanted to go there more. I didn't want to come here.
Right.
And you forget that there are other people grieving him also. It's like I wasn't the only one in the world grieving him, but I felt like I was. And so grief is selfish, and deservedly so. I think we're entitled to that. I think that we have rights to that. But at some point, it's good to kind of wake up and see who around you still needs you.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
to give them some love as well.
Yeah, grief is a deep dive into your subconscious programming.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
It so is. It's an accelerated journey into, just like we talked about, into what you believe is true, like into your belief systems, like what you believe is true for you and who you are and your identity. It's just a deep dive. That's why the book Awakened by Death, death is such an incredible accelerated awakening journey. It can be, unless you resist it and say, okay, this is the worst thing that's happened to me. I'm going to put my head under the covers and never come back up for air, but which is a choice. We have free will.
That's right. It is a choice. But death is a catalyst for so many people. It absolutely just catapulted me on my journey. And,
absolutely.
I talk about how, I didn't even finish that conversation about religion and spirituality, but I think I summed it up when I realized that I had known God in my life. I had seen God work in my life because Bryan and I had been saved by God from death in a raging river in Idaho. And that's an amazing story that's in the book, so I won't repeat it. But to live life with God at the helm, with him direct, with like God as my partner, that was something I had never known before. And when I say God and spirit, to me, they're the same. Mm-hmm. So to me, spirit is God, spirit is our loved ones, spirit are the masters, spirit. I mean, to me, spirit is all inclusive. And so I use the words interchangeably.
What did Bryan say to you about the agreement he had with the guy that killed him, that caused his death?
So
his physical death.
Yeah. What Bryan says about that is that that it was an exit point that he chose to take, because I always knew that he would die young on some level, although I don't know if I was conscious of it, but I was always afraid that something would happen to him. That was the physical part of me, was afraid that something would happen to him. And he knew it too. And I think that when he met that man on that street corner that night, somebody presented it to me once as karmic. It was karmic retribution, that Bryan had killed him in a prior life and that it was Bryan's turn to settle the score. I never had a real comfort level with that. That could be true, or it might not be true. But what Bryan did say that I believe 1,000% is that it was an exit point, a death window, an exit point, how there's different terms for it. And he chose to take it because the work he came here to do was done. And the greater work that he has to do is now going to be done from the other side. Bryan helps a lot of kids over there. He gathers them up in the work that we do, but even more beyond that, he's busy over there. He's busy helping kids over there.
Absolutely. So he didn't go into the agreement that he had with that soul. What I'm getting, anyway, I'll tell you what I'm getting. I'll just let you answer that question.
He did not give me details. What he said was that that they had interchanged a couple of times. Bryan had killed him in a life. He had killed Bryan in a life, and that this was settling the score, and that this was the end of it. That there was no more karmic debt to be paid after this incident, after this life.
Bryan had said that to you about.
The medium had said that to me.
Oh no,
So-
the medium, no Bryan. But no, what did Bryan say? Because I'm not getting that at all. But anyway, we can all get different things. What
that's
did
what I'm saying
Bryan
is-
say to you? You know,
Yeah,
but
that-
to you directly, not through the medium, but to you directly.
What he told me directly is that it was an exit point. I never asked him. I
didn't
never
ask him.
asked him about the man, but he just said that it was an exit point that he chose.
And is that man in jail? Like where
He's in
is
prison. Yep, he's in prison in California. He's serving second-degree murder because the man had engaged in a fight. He had started a fight. They had engaged in a fight. Bryan had, won the fight, if such a thing, and walked away. And he and his friends are like, whatever, let us go. And so then the man ran back into the apartment, grabbed a knife, ran out, and stabbed, one fatal blow. So it was clearly murder, but they couldn't prove premeditated.
And
so
where
that's why
are
it's
you?
great.
Where are you with that? With him? How do you feel about him?
I just never thought much about him at all. That's hard for people to really understand, but to me, he's just always been the man who killed my son. When I presented my what do you call it? When we went to the trial and I got to speak, I had some anger in that speech. It was really like, how could you? What I did was present to him what he took away from us and who Bryan was and how brilliant Bryan was and all of the awards that he'd won and all of these things, right? He was just brilliant and funny and handsome and a great athlete and a 4.0 student and dean's list at the universities that he attended. And I'm like, how dare you? Who do you think you are that you got to take that away from us? And, what happened is that night I had a dream that I was with his mother and the roles were reversed and Bryan had killed her son. So I had that dream. And I remember I was so heartsick that my son had taken the life of her son. And, she and the sisters, they had all been in the courtroom that day, the sisters glaring at us the whole time. And the man himself just was rather contrite, he didn't say anything to us. But that interaction with the mother in the dream that night, it just gave me more compassion for her and more understanding that each soul has to follow their own path. And for whatever reason, this was his path to take. And do I wish he hadn't have done it? Of course. Am I angry with him? I guess I'm angry at him. I just never think about him. So I think it will be interesting. The test will be, and I'll let you know when he's up for parole, because I honestly, Karen, I don't know how I'm going to react. I hope that I will be spiritually evolved enough that I will do the right thing, whatever that is. But I think the best answer I can give you is I really don't think about him. I don't allow myself to do that. And I think that the dream with his mother, where we had reversed roles, enabled me to do that and to move forward. It's never been about him. The journey has always been about Bryan and about how to find him. If I hate him and if I have all this anger toward him, then I'm not gonna ever be able to be bigger than my story. I'm gonna stay stuck in my story. And if I stay stuck in my story, if I carry that kind of hate and anger in my heart, I'm not gonna be able to evolve spiritually. I'm not gonna be able to make a deeper connection with my son, right? And with my spirit guides. So I don't want that to hold me back. What are you getting? Tell me what you're getting.
Oh, what am I getting? Okay, so I'm not getting it was a retribution at all, karma. What I'm getting is that Bryan and this soul had an agreement that he would be his teacher and that he would teach him about so many things. So, and a lot of them is about how to overcome his emotions, how to control his emotions, really. And so the whole thing was set up. What I was getting before was, so you said Bryan chose to take an exit point. So he dovetailed. He came within the vicinity of a man who was in rage in his life, like he was just experiencing so many traumatic emotions, and he didn't know how to deal with them. He didn't know how to deal with them. He's learning now. And so they had that agreement together. It wasn't a retribution karmic thing. It was a soul agreement between two souls who were teaching each other. And Bryan's taken his exit point, but he's not just going to drop dead of a heart attack. He's going to set up a scenario that's going to be so much broader than him just dropping dead. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to involve more people. It's going to involve forgiveness. He set it up so that for you as well as his parents, the dream that you had with the mother was just perfect, putting yourself in her shoes. But there's a journey for you, because had you not had someone to blame and to hate, then you wouldn't have had the journey of forgiveness. And, the journey to connecting more to our soul is a journey of unconditional love, and knowing that we have these agreements is one thing, but living it as our truth and having that complete love and unconditional love for somebody who's done a horrific thing to you, like living that is a totally different journey. Like knowing it and living it, different journey, just like you've expressed to us so beautifully, So Bryan and you knew that, and so it was all arranged. It was all arranged, and because it was a death and a murder, and it just involved so many more components, that is our opportunity for more spiritual growth.
Thank you for sharing that, and that resonates with me. The other never did. I just never, I was like, well, like that doesn't feel right at all. Yeah. And that does, I probably never asked Bryan the question directly. So I'm glad you did. And I'm glad you got that answer. It's beautiful. And that's so like Bryan. He would like, making kind of drama. He wasn't a drama kid, but I think he would love that. He was a producer. He was going to be a film director. Absolutely. So that doesn't surprise me that he would create that. Yeah.
Wrote the script, scripted it. Absolutely. Yeah, funny. Which we've skipped over, which is kind of the whole crux of the book and everything, was which you've said in all the other podcasts, but it's the most important part, is that when you were in your place of trying to connect with, like trying to find Bryan, and then you got that message about, which is the title. Do you want to tell us that story?
Sure, I'd love to. So as I said earlier, grief is a journey, and it's, 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and, 3 steps forward and 4 steps back. And you just got to keep walking the path. Right. And I did that. I did that for a long time. And as I said, I took every opportunity that presented itself, and I made a lot of progress, and I made a lot of headway. And I was really starting to understand why he had died, and the fact that we do live on after we die, and there is such a thing as soul planning. And Bryan and I did have this agreement to work together with him on the other side and me still here. And even though I knew all of that and all of the amazing signs, and I think at that point I had one pretty incredible meditation experience, nothing like what I had after, but I still doubted, was the point. I always would doubt, and I'd put myself out there, and then I'd be like, I don't know. It's like, maybe that's just my mind. That really wasn't Bryan. That was just my mind. And I think it's the hardest thing for us when we can't touch something or see it, or, it's just hard to believe that it's real. And it really is just trust and faith. So one day in meditation, I was, feeling this doubt, and Spirit, God said to me, listen. It's like, listen, Linda, just choose to believe that it's all real. Choose to believe that it's Bryan talking to you. Choose to believe that Bryan sent you that ladybug. Choose to believe that everything you're experiencing is real, and that the love in your heart is really coming from him and from us, and that we're here to help you along the way. And I was like, oh, is it that simple? Can I really just choose to believe? And it changed everything. I came out of that meditation and I said, okay, I can do that. This I can do. I can choose to believe. And sooner or later, God willing, I actually will believe. And it was such a smooth, seamless transition from choosing to believe to actually believing. I don't even think I could tell you when it happened. It was almost immediate. Like just choosing to believe and eliminating all doubt and fear from my vocabulary about the communication aspect of things. Everything broke wide open, and Bryan started coming to me in much deeper and more profound ways. I did experiment with doing some readings for people. I could feel my spirit guides tinkering in my brain. It was like they were adjusting this and screwing that and, getting me ready for the experience. And, it just broke wide open because I truly believed that it was all real. And so there's no doubt anymore. There's nothing holding me back. There's not that fear that I'm making it all up. And then the other piece of it, so that was the title. That was quite a long time ago. And that was can I hold the book up? Choose to Believe.
Mm-hmm.
That was the title of the book way back then. And I've never wavered from that. The other part of all my grief journey that, if I may add, a big breakthrough moment was when came from the teaching of Sally Baldwin in Sun Valley in 2010. And it's the concept of being willing to kind of let go of the physical person that you knew here and meet them as they are now, and be okay with seeing them as they are now, as the light body and the spirit that they are now, and understanding that we can meet them halfway in that space, and they can still present themselves to us as the physical Bryan with the orange striped shirt and the beautiful smile and the dimple on the side of his cheek. He can still present himself to me that way, but I know that that's not who he is now. I know that he's a light body, beautiful spirit being, and allowing myself to meet him there also was a game changer. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Not only is he a beautiful light body spiritual being, so are you. So is everybody else. So is everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So meeting him halfway is meeting you halfway. It's so interesting when we reach out to reconnect with our loved ones, we actually reach out to reconnect with our true self.
Yes. And that's what we talked about earlier. It's like, that was a surprise for me in this journey. Was I finding my God and my understanding of who my God is, and finding myself was probably, that was kind of exciting. It was like, oh, okay. I like me better. I'm a better person than I was before. And I owe that to him. And I want to say the sacrifice that he made, but it isn't a sacrifice, because it's what we planned, and he knew, and this is the agreement that we made. And next time it might be a different agreement, and maybe I'll, who knows?
Yeah. It is.
What are you thinking?
He's just like, they're just making themselves known. They chime in. They chime in with lights. They chime in. They're just chiming in. Choose to believe. It's so interesting because we say that we have to choose to believe in life after death, or in spirit, but actually we choose to believe it like not in it. As souls who are infinite creative potential, beings of love and light, flowing through a physical life adventure, we actually choose to believe to forget all that. So it's so interesting that it's almost like you don't choose to believe, you just choose to remember.
Yes, which really is the purpose for our being here at all, right? It's like, I mean, probably we come with lessons that we want to learn and all that, but really we come to remember who we are.
Yeah. And everything. I was chatting with my mob about you last night, because I often say to them, what are we going to talk about? Because I always show up empty-handed with questions, like I don't have any questions. And they were saying that your world is created because of your beliefs. This world doesn't exist outside of what you believe. And I'm like, oh, tell me more about that. They said, everything you experience is a belief, like everything. Like what you see as your reality is nothing more than a belief structure and a belief system that you come into, that you get indoctrinated into, that is repeated over and over again. We were talking about this in my group. I've brought up my group a few times, but anyway, we were talking about repetition. You know, when babies are little, we hold up something and we say, glass. Glass, it's a glass, and we repeat it and we repeat it and we repeat it, and then we ask them to say it. What is it? What is it? It's like we're just kind of creating this reality through what we call teaching, but we're choosing to believe it, and that choose to believe goes so far. You know, like choose to believe you can or you can't. You can do anything or you can't do anything is a choice.
Every day. I mean, every day.
Yeah.
Every day. From the minute we wake, we can choose to be mad at the world, or we can choose to have compassion. We can choose, to have a good day. We can choose to be, angry, or, I mean, it's just always a choice. We can choose to get out of bed. We can choose to stay in bed. I mean, it's always a choice.
Always a choice.
Yeah, always. Really, everything that we do is a choice. And when you think about it that way, when you become the empowered one, so that we're empowering ourselves, right? To become who we want to be. We get to paint the picture. We get to write the next chapter. And it's all in the words that we say.
Bryan's very happy about this conversation.
Yeah, that's so funny. And that's so funny that you're getting all that. I get spiritual. I call them my spiritual tingles, but I get tingles throughout my body when something like that happens. And lately there's been these like big black birds that are like, they keep like, every time I do an interview, they're like coming at the house. I don't know what that's about, but it's all a choice, and it empowers us. And the belief that our loved ones still live, the belief that we can still have a relationship with them, and the belief that we are here for a reason and that we still have work to do or a purpose in our life, that's empowering. And that's how we're going to heal from the most traumatic, loss, although I don't like the word loss because he's not lost. I know where he is. Yeah,
exactly. No, I think you said that he was doing script writing or something to do with movies and writing or something. He was saying no coincidence about that. That's what we're teaching. And he says we, as in you and him, that we are the script writers of our life, and hence the book. I mean, when you reached out to me to be on the show, I thought, do I want to have another person on the show that's talking about the death of a loved one? Because I've had many people on the show. And then just the title of your book, I just thought, oh, wow, there's just so much conversation in this Choose to Believe, because it's such a big conversation in our lives, so that we're choosing that we're choosing all of it. And so many people say, like, if we're creating our own reality and we're choosing it, surely we don't create the dramas in our life. But if you look outside of your identity as the personality and the physical person, and you include your identity as the soul, then you can see that, as you have said, that your experience with Bryan leaving his body, you being his mother and loving, doting mother, and then him being the beautiful, talented, gorgeous, divine boy leaving so early, that was a choice too.
Yes.
Even though it doesn't look like a choice.
Yes.
Does it feel, like, knowing it and living it, does it absolutely feel now, 12 years later, like it was a choice and that you're happy about it? Or does it still feel like a loss?
No, it definitely feels like a choice that he made, and that I honor that 1,000%.
And that you made as well?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. That we made together. Thank you. Absolutely. I believe it. I feel it. I know it. I don't doubt it for a second. And I, like I said, I mean, every day I get to wake up and communicate with my son and talk to my son, and he's by my side, and he makes himself known, not just to me, but to other people. And so I love that. And I feel
see that
blessed.
You feel blessed. I see that we've been yakking. It's just about to go 11:11 here for a while, but I wanted to talk about what he's told you about, being on the other side, like what communication he's given you, the physical you, about being a spirit and what it's like to be a spirit. Did he ever talk to you about, what he did when he left his body, or or did that come
Yeah.
through mediums? Like,
Yeah, well, in the early days, he did talk to a medium about that. And I know that it was real because this medium, for the first time ever, actually, Bryan actually became Bryan, and he spoke in a first tense, which he never does. And he explained kind of the tunnel of light. He explained a woman who was my grandmother, actually my mom, I believe it was, who met him there. He talked about a bubble, and that he was in a bubble with my grandfather, who was also the one who brought Bryan to the medium that very first time. And the medium described him to a T. And then, without knowing anything about me or my story, said, and he's brought with him a young man. I believe it's your son. And I just fell apart, and he's like, wait. Anyhow, so that he was in a bubble with my papa, and that he did the kind of life review that they talk about. I believe also at that moment in time when they were in that bubble, Bryan did present himself here to my friend who is psychic outside on the back deck of our home, and large, vision of him that she had. And I somehow we were able to piece together that was when that happened. Anyhow, and then the life, he said that when he died, that it was like you hear that the light kind of drew him forward, and he just went to the light. And I used to ask him, why didn't you run? I was really hung up on that question of, why did you stand there and let the guy come run up to you and give you one final jab? Why? And finally he did answer, and he said, I had no choice. I had no time. I had no pain. I want you to quit thinking about the story. Like, please stop focusing on the story. There's nothing you could have done. But he also described heaven, that he told the medium that we create whatever home we want to live in. Like, he had a really cool bachelor pad, and he was describing the bachelor pad, which he never had. See, Bryan never had that. He was in dorms. He was either living at home or he was in a dorm. And he had just moved into his first apartment with his two friends when he was killed. So they'd only lived there like 3 weeks. So that was his only experience outside of home or dorm. So he was really excited to have a bachelor pad. He talked about my mom having a Victorian home, and my mom was Old South, born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. I mean, so, that made perfect sense to me. He said that my mom has said that that she misses the wind, that you don't feel the wind on your face. But obviously things like the warmth, the sun, the colors and the flowers and everything, we've heard so often are such brilliant colors. The other thing, which I did get to experience in a little, you heard me talk about it with Cyrus at the end of that interview, the meditation I had that really was, Cyrus believes astral travel, where I went to the other side. But Bryan also talks about the freedom. He showed me how he flies. He took me with him, and he showed me how he flies. And he loves the freedom of being spirit. And he said, it's all about the freedom. The freedom is what keeps me here. Those were his words. So it's the freedom that keeps me here. And that makes sense to me that he would love that, because he was always a free spirit, but yet at the same time, he worried about doing the right thing. And I think everything they do is the right thing, right? Their spirit, they're just all love. And I think that he really enjoys that pressure being taken off of him. And that's partly what he's referring to there. So that's a little bit of what I've learned.
Yeah, unmuted. Just share the experience you had with him, where he was showing you how to fly. I wrote down this morning, remember the movement, there is freedom in the movement.
Oh, good.
As a quote. Like, what were you doing to have that experience? You were meditating and you had an out-of-body experience, or was it at night in bed?
No. So I have learned, I meditate with mantra.
Mm-hmm.
And I use the Om Namah Shivaya
Mm-hmm.
as my mantra. And it is, it's like immediately calming and soothing, and kind of takes me to that center point in my heart. And I'm able to get very still very quickly with the mantra. And so I had been, actually that particular experience though, I don't know, I must have needed to tell you about the mantra, but that particular meditation was in a group setting at a conference, Helping Parents Heal conference. And it was a guided meditation. And it was the craziest thing because I'd never experienced this in a guided meditation in a group setting, but I immediately went kind of under, and almost like I was hypnotized. But I was conscious. So the right side of my brain was very quickly leaving. The left side of my brain was still seated in my chair. All of my Sun Valley moms were around me, also doing the meditation. And, I think Mark is guiding us, through the woods and to the bridge and over the bridge. And I was just there. And I walked across the bridge, and there was this beautiful garden. And it was the most beautiful, spectacular thing I've ever seen. And, Bryan sends me ladybugs. That was the first thing he sent me as a sign, because I asked him to send me a ladybug. And he did that night, and has sent many ladybugs since then. It's really our thing. And ladybugs were everywhere on the flowers. They were big ladybugs flying around. They were on the flower, gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. And then I see Bryan and all of my loved ones approaching me. And it's Bryan and my mom and my dad and my grandma and my granddaddy and my papa, Selma, and all of them were there. And they all approached me, and they came up to me, and they wrapped me in their love. And they started pouring their love through me, starting at the crown, all the way through my body, all the way through my fingers, down through my toes, through my feet. And it was just like vibrating through me. It was like growing with intensity. So, it started out as like, oh, we love you. And then but it never said the word. It was just the feeling of love. And part of me was conscious of the body back in the conference room in the chair. And I saw that girl with tears streaming down her face. I was absolutely just crying, beside myself, while I was receiving, while my soul was with them and receiving their love. And finally it got to the point, right? It was almost painful. It was becoming painful in my belly because it was so intense. The intensity of the spirit love, if you have not felt it, is the most, especially when there's all of them together pouring it through me. I just can't, it was the most beautiful, amazing thing that I am so grateful to have been blessed with that experience. And right when I was like, going to have to break away, they pulled out, and Bryan took my hand, and we went, off.
Flying.
And I didn't understand at first. And I think what I wrote in the journal immediately, I wrote it all down. I said the sky was the ground, and the ground was the sky, and I didn't understand. And then it was like, oh, we're flying. He's showing me how he flies. And that's when he said, it's all about the movement. Don't forget the movement. The freedom is in the movement. Was that the exact quote? You wrote it down.
There is freedom in the movement.
There is freedom in the movement. And I was just like, and he said, this is why I don't want to come back. And so, which was poignant as well, because I'm always like, why did you leave? And so it's like, that's why I don't want to come back. It's just so beautiful there. I wouldn't want to come back either. Right. And then my loved ones were back, and kind of for a final hug. And my mom and dad had some private words for me. And then, they just kind of pulled away. And then I was back in my body, and just tears streaming down. And I just woke up, and I opened my eyes, and I just started writing, and I wrote everything that had happened. And that, it's in the book. It's at the end of the book, and it's exactly verbatim as it took place. Yeah. So I feel very blessed to have experienced that.
Yeah, well, you can experience more of that. Like just when you were talking about it, they were showing me that you can be there and here simultaneously. It's just just a shift in focus. Like we're so focused on the physical world, and if you just sit back and just expand your focus, you can be here and there simultaneously. And that's exactly what you did. Like you didn't have to die or go to sleep. you could just sit in meditation and have an out-of-body experience, or this experience, while you're still present and breathing and conscious in your physical body, which people don't understand. That so they was just saying that you can be here and there simultaneously.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I think I put
said
that.
You are here and there simultaneously. They just said, reiterate that it's not like you can be there. It's like you're just opening to the truth that you are already there, here. And
I almost saw him the other day. It was, can I tell that story? Do you have just?
Yeah, please.
It was, I was sitting with my niece at the kitchen table, and to the left of the kitchen table is the fireplace, and Bryan's picture of it's a side profile picture of him with his camera, direct from school, from USC. And it's a sepia tone. It's really a beautiful print. It sits above the fireplace. So I'm sitting here talking to my niece, and her baby is there. And all of a sudden, my attention is just drawn over to the fireplace. And I look, and I'm like, that was weird. And so I pull back, and almost instantly, it's like, they pull me back over. And I look, and I'm like, okay, hi, Bryan, hi, Bryan. And I pull away, and one more time, they pull me back, and it was like looking at the scene of that corner fireplace through water.
Right.
And I understood, and I think my mind took over, unfortunately, but I understood that he is there. And and then I think I just broke it. So I know it's coming soon. I know that that's his goal, and I know that I will see him. They have told me that many times. So I'm super excited for that day. And what I like to tell people is, for me anyway, all of the connection, the experiences, it really has been a progression. And, it progressed, with meditation. I couldn't get through a meditation in the beginning without crying. And then, over time, over a number of years, led me to that out of body experience in that meditation room in 2016. And now Bryan sends me these amazing hugs that just, my whole body just vibrates and tingles. And I literally will drop whatever's in my hand because it's so intense, and I have to just stop what I'm doing and let it run through me.
A bit like an orgasm.
Yeah, it is like a full body, full on, right? And I was going to say earlier, I used to call those spiritual tingles spiritual orgasms, but I didn't want to say it.
I've heard so many people say dying is like having the best orgasm you've ever had in your life.
Right? Oh my gosh, seriously. Well, it is like that. And it's just like, and I have to just let the energy run through me. And that's what I do. I just stop what I'm doing and just like, hold on, whoever I'm talking to, and they'll watch me. And it's like, I just have to watch it run through me and run its course. And then I'm like, thank you, Bryan. That was an amazing hug that you just gave me.
Yeah.
So I almost saw him, and that was just like about 3 weeks ago. So I'm pretty excited for that day to come.
I know. It's exciting. And the veils are, we use the terms of veils are getting thinner, but as the energy frequencies in this world, in this realm, in this vibratory experience that we find ourselves in shifts, that vibratory experience that he's in and this vibratory experience, the expanse is getting more similar. And so we have more access to them, like when I speak with people who hang out with ETs and on ships and stuff, it's like the spirit world and their physical world is one world. Like they're talking to spirit as balls of light, and like talking about, you're going to incarnate into, but it's like a part of their reality. It's like it's one world, whereas we see the worlds as so separate and the chasm so far apart, and yet it is one world. It's just a vibratory experience. And so when we raise our vibe to be more synchronized and in alignment with that vibration, that realm that he's in, then we can have more access to it. It's interesting that you say that he created his little pad after he transitioned. So many people who don't get to experience what they want to experience in this physical experience as the personality create. A friend of mine could never travel because she was sick. She was born affected by thalidomide, and she died at 40. And after she died, she traveled the world. In an astral world, she created the experience of traveling all over the world. So she got to experience with her boyfriend, who also transitioned. She got to experience what she couldn't experience in life. So it's so interesting how we do that, how we can do that if we choose to, if we want to.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Good for her. That makes me happy too.
But you know, as I tune into Bryan, I don't see him as the young son that you remember. I see him. There is I don't actually have an identity. It's like I can't put the face that you've got on your, Facebook page to the energy that I'm perceiving. But if I was to create a human identity, like an older man.
Yes, definitely an old soul. I mean,
that's how he presents to me. Like, because when I think of, Eric Medhus, he showed up as this, teenage boy. I saw him, physically as this teenage boy, but I haven't done that with Bryan. Like, I couldn't do that with Bryan. I'm like reaching to see him, but I couldn't find him. And so I let go of trying to see him as he's presented in the photographs. And then, as I see him on the other side, I see him as this, it presents as an older man. He doesn't really have an identity as an older man, but that's how it's presented to me. It's sort of showing me that he's a wise old soul.
I was just going to use the word wise right when you said that. He really is wise, and he does depart. He does depart wisdom with humor too. So, but yeah, I think that's interesting. I think too, though, because this conversation is our conversation has been all about less of the human grief and more of the spiritual consciousness awakening into the souls and being able to communicate. So that's perhaps partly why too that you see him on that level.
And I see a lot of his teaching is very in alignment with what I teach. It's about being the deliberate creator, being the script writer of your life, like being the creator of your life. Like if your life is looking one way, change the script, rewrite the story. And even the title of your book, and that's why I sort of wanted to connect with you, because that's very much what my guides ask me to teach, is like take your power back in being the deliberate creator of your life. Even when you've gone through tragedy, like we talk about on the shows, death is the tragedy that most people see as the worst thing that can happen. We can rewrite the story of our life. It doesn't have to be a life of pain and grief. It can be a life of expansion and awareness and light and love. And just like you say, just like everything you say,
It's hard work, though. I'm not going to lie. It's not easy. It really isn't, because grief is hard. Grief is hard, man. It sucks. It really does. And you have to be, you have to want a happy life. You have to want that. And if you do want that, if you can look inside and say, what if you could project 5 years from now and be like, well, what do I want my life to look like in 5 years? Is this what you still want? Do you want to be drowning your sorrows with that wine like I did? I did it for a month, but do you want to be doing that for 5 more years? Do you want to be mad at the world and, mad at the circumstances that took your loved one away from you? Or, do you want a life that's happy and joyful with your loved one by your side and helping you and guiding you and communicating with you? And like, which of those futures do you want to create? And then what I do is give people the tools to get there, to get to option B. Because if you choose option 1, I can't help you. I mean, I'll hold you in my heart and I'll pray that you make a different choice the next day. But I can't, I could give you tools all day long and it's not going to help you if you don't want it for yourself. So, we do have to want that. We have to, I call it conscious healing. And, it's not like I coined that phrase, but it is exactly that. It's conscious healing, consciously choosing to heal, consciously choosing to grow, and consciously choosing to still have a relationship with our loved one who died, because we can.
Oh, absolutely.
And we will.
I remember Esther Hicks, as she was channeling Abraham. I'm sure most people know who Esther Hicks is. If you don't, look it up. She talked as Abraham. She used to talk about death all the time. You just got to get over this death thing. And she was so flippant about it. She said, we're so irreverent about death because there is none. And then Esther, the human Esther, goes through the transition of her beloved partner. And she's just in grief for about a year and she stops all the Abraham teachings. And I was so tapped into Jerry in spirit at that time, probably more so than she was, and at that time, because she was in grief. And then when she reconnected with Jerry, which was the same connection she'd had with Abraham, she spoke about how just like you said, she said that she's closer to Jerry now than she could have ever have been as a physical, as his wife, because he's in his clump and she's in her clump. And even though they can come together physically, it's not the same as being in your clump of flesh and having a soul flow through you, and that intimacy of that connection of having that soul flow through you and the two consciousnesses inhabiting the same form, and how amazing that is. Amazing. And the closeness and intimacy and connection and oneness that you experience is like nothing that you can experience as mother and son, or lovers, as a husband and wife, or partners or lovers. It doesn't come close. So and so it was beautiful to hear her say that, but took her a couple of years to come out and say that. It took a journey for her as well. Even though she was this amazing spiritual teacher, she still had her own physical journey. And the beauty of it was that Abraham spoke about that so often. You just got to get over this death thing. And then she had her own experience to give her that experience of what
firsthand. And it's interesting because then she can teach it on a much deeper level.
Absolutely.
And with
even though she's channeling. Even
though she's channeling.
She can still channel it on a more deep. Absolutely. Because the spirits still use our mind and our belief systems when we're channeling. They still have to flow through our minds, our brains, and our DNA. Oh, darling one, it's been such a pleasure. And I just want to say to you that Bryan is saying thank you so much. Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you're doing. He's so proud of you, and he just reverence, just deep reverence, deep gratitude for what you're doing. Huge amounts of gratitude. I can't express what I'm feeling. It's too hard to express what I'm feeling, but
thank you for that. That is so sweet. Thank you for opening up yourself and your beautiful audience to us, kind of unknowns. And we everybody has a story to tell, and I appreciate you letting us tell ours. Thank you so much. I just, you are a beautiful soul. I've already subscribed to your podcast, so I get to hear more. I've been listening to your more recent things.
I know. I had the gorgeous Darrell on last week, who takes photographs. He turns the invisible into the visible, takes photographs of orbs, and that was a magical show. Absolutely magical. So maybe you could. I'm not good at taking photos. I can see them physically. Like I've seen lots of flashes and orbs around today. Bryan's been making himself known as a point of light. But I haven't had any success actually photographing them. But Darrell does. He can't see them with his eyes, but he just gets those shivers like you were talking about.
I love all the spirit artists. They're just amazing, know. Like Sonia, is it Sonia Rinaldi that does that? The spirit.
Yeah, amazing.
It's like incredible. It's like, wow.
Amazing stuff. One of the things in Darrell's show that blew me away was his girlfriend was doing a smudge with some sage. And he had seen a white poodle in his mind's eye. And then he took this photograph of her, and the smoke has formed into a white poodle right above her head. And it is so obvious. It's like, oh my God. And it was her grandmother's white poodle, because her grandmother had died a few years before her. And
that's cool.
So it's amazing. It's all amazing. It's all amazing, amazing. So
it is
expansion and more fun to come with spirit and more interaction, and it's exciting times ahead for humanity. And I thank you for the work you're doing in the world as well.
You're so welcome. Thank you. And happy holidays.
Happy days.
Okay. Thanks,
What a
Karen.
beautiful conversation with Paige. Amazing. Beautiful. Yeah. It was nice to tune in to Bryan too in spirit. It's funny how I didn't see him as the 24-year-old, however old he was when he died, 23-year-old. We were talking before, after the show, after I finished the recording, how he was saying, remember the movement, there is freedom in the movement. Cyrus was saying when he had her Paige on his show that I thought was brilliant. He said maybe he was talking about the spiritual movement. There's freedom in the movement. I thought, what a great perspective on that statement. There is freedom when you join the spiritual movement, not necessarily the religious movement, but the conscious awakening movement, the spiritual movement, when you connect with your higher self and your spirit guides and your dead relatives or loved ones in spirit or whatever. They don't like to be called dead because they kind of feel more alive than most of us here on earth. But there is freedom in the movement. I thought that was a great perspective from beautiful Cyrus. And Paige and I were just talking about the dreams that she had too. Anyway, yes, it's so much to discover as we reconnect with our spiritual home while we're flowing through a physical life, a physical mind, body, spirit complex. The expansion of consciousness, it's wonderful, isn't it? And that we're choosing all of it. We're choosing to believe all of it. It doesn't really matter what it is that you believe. It is a choice, which we don't actually feel like it's a choice, many of us. Some people just really argue with that point, like, if I'm in an accident and my body's smashed up and I can't move anymore, that's not a choice. You know, the fact that I can't move is not a choice. I think of Christopher Reeves. Remember Christopher Reeves, who was Superman many years ago, and he was thrown for a horse and he became a quadriplegic. Anyway, and he was a big advocate. He knew that his body could heal. He knew that he could heal the spine, even though the current allopathic science of the day couldn't do it, couldn't repair his spine and have him walk again. He knew it was possible. Anyway, he died, left his body, not having achieved that. But I really feel like he'll be back and be a part of the technology and the science, be it consciousness science, that will show humanity how we can choose that, how all things are possible as we move on our expansion journey into a new world. We're going to see so many things that will become a reality and our truth and possible that we believe are not possible now. All of it. I was just saying to Paige, when I was listening to Esther Hicks channeling Abraham years ago, there was a woman that asked, someone had said to Esther through Abraham through Esther, so do you mean to say that if you chopped off somebody's arm and we believed that the arm could grow back, it would? And Abraham said, yes, absolutely. Which, when you think of it from our consciousness, we think it's not possible. But isn't it crazy to think that all things are possible simply when you know it to be your truth? I was saying to Paige also afterwards that when I read in the Seth books years ago that there are only two rules to life, only two. One, you create your own reality, and two, there are no limits. There are no limits. And we hear all the time when we hear about near-death experiences or people talking to spirit, their dead loved ones, that just like Bryan said that he created his batch pad on the other side, through the mechanism of thought, he created a whole scenario, a whole world where he's in a batch pad because he'd never had that in his physical life because he was at college and living in dorms and he had just moved into a flat with some friends, but obviously a desire held within the physical lifetime of Bryan. Oh, I'd love to have my own pad, my own batch pad. So he created that in spirit, and he creates that. Like if you listen to even Elisa Medhus, Eric talks about this, how we can create anything in spirit, like go skiing, do anything with the technology of mind consciousness. The crazy thing is that we can do that here too. It's just that we don't know we can do that. And here in this dimension, we have the buffer of time. So when we have a thought that we want to create something, it doesn't manifest instantly like it does in spirit. But there is, as above, so below, there is no difference between here and there, only that there's a few rules that change. It's still the same laws apply, but the rules are different in that there is a denser reality here. The vibratory rate is slower. So there is this buffer of time. So there is time between a thought and the manifestation of the thought, but also the intensity of the thought, like the amount of emotional energy and motion behind the thought, and the manifestation in what we call our physical reality changes too. So the time for each thought differs depending on the amount of energy behind the thought, be it an angry thought or a joyful, blissful thought. So there's so much that we're coming into awareness about who we are as powerful, deliberate creators and how we create our reality, and that all things are possible when we believe it, when we know it to be true. And when we choose to believe something, even though it seems impossible, when we choose to believe it, we can create that reality. Again, we have to dovetail with the soul's arrangement or agreements or what we're experiencing to live or experience in this lifetime. I was talking about that with my Inner Sanctum tribe on Monday. We were talking about illness, and I was saying that I had been told by a healer that in a past lifetime I had been a doctor a few times, and that I died frustrated, not knowing what the difference was in that lifetime between, say, half a dozen patients with the same illness, why they didn't all respond to the same treatment. And then so I put that question to my group, and I said, why? And so I came in this lifetime with that question as one of the questions I wanted to fulfill in this lifetime, like what makes someone heal and someone not heal? Like, why can't someone with the same disease get the same benefit from a treatment that the other person? Like, what's the difference? And obviously it's a consciousness, it's a spiritual story. And apparently in those lifetimes I was too scientific. I wasn't open to the spiritual part, the component, the consciousness component, which many doctors are still like that today in this time, on this timeline. And so some souls can come in to experience illness and they don't choose to heal because there's so much benefit for them as a soul, not a person, that the illness is giving them. They're learning to be supported. They're learning what compassion is. They're learning how to receive. So there can be a lot of benefits. So sometimes someone doesn't heal or somebody dies of cancer or whatever because that's what the soul is choosing. So but it's all a choice. Like, even if we're choosing not to overcome, that's a choice as well. And so choice, it's the biggest component of who we are as deliberate creations. We're choosing it. So whatever you're going through, be it good, bad, just know that on some level of your being, you've chosen it. And when you can tap in to that choice, like, why am I choosing this? What is the benefit for my soul? How can I see the silver lining? How can I see the gift? Then you take your power back as a deliberate creator, and it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Choose to believe. I loved the title of the book, Choose to Believe. Choose to believe that you can, even though you believe you can't. Just choose to believe it. Just entertain the thought. Try it on. I had a girlfriend who died in her early 40s. Maybe she was in her late 30s. Who was such a beautiful being. That knocked me around when she left her body, because she had been at my place maybe a year or so before, telling me how she wanted to get married and she wanted to have babies and she wanted the house with the white picket fence and all that stuff, like just pouring out her desires. And then she left her body so young, having not fulfilled them in this lifetime. And I grieved that she didn't get to fulfill all those things that she wanted. I'm sure she created them in spirit, just like Bryan did, after she left her body, to sort of experience what she, some of those desires, or she'll come back and experience them in the next lifetime. But she used to say, she was a life coach. She used to say, try it on. She said, just like you try on a cardigan or a sweater or a jumper, just try on the belief, like just try it on for size. And if you don't like it, you can take it off, or try it on like you would try on a new pair of sunglasses. Try on the thought, just try it on. This is what she used to say. I used to love it. Try it on. And if you don't like it, you can always take it off. Yeah, so we can try on some beliefs that we think are completely impossible. We can just try them on for size and see how they fit. And if you're not wearing them well, you can take them off and put them on later. But isn't it interesting? Just like a new pair of sunglasses or a new shirt or top, sometimes when you put it on, your identity of who you think you are doesn't match. Just like these glasses, and another $5 pair of magnifiers. I hadn't had this sort of shape before. So I thought, I don't know if they suit me. And then after you wear them a few times, it's just like, I can't believe they didn't suit me. They just become part of your face. So what seems foreign in one moment becomes the normal in the next. Yeah. Anyway, it's a big conversation. It's a conversation I love having, how we choose to believe, how we choose to create our world, how we are genius creators. Can we be genius, deliberate creators in our world, especially coming into 2021, big year ahead? Can we be more deliberate in how we flow our energy and what choices we make and how we can experience the world, even with all the contrast, even with all the drama that is to come, because there is a lot more to come. The world isn't going to calm down anytime soon. So it's up to you guys, the light weavers, the new world teachers, the difference makers, to help people navigate the contrast and the deconstruction of old belief systems, old patterns, old systems, to help them navigate that through helping them flow their energy or choose their thoughts in a way that feels good so that you can thrive and enjoy this life while we're here. Thanks again for watching, and remember to buy the book Awakened by Death. It's full of stories, just like Paige's, of people who have had an amazing awakenings through the death experience. Many of them had their own NDEs. Some of them are extensive and expansive and blow your mind. It's a beautiful book with many pearls of wisdom from different people's stories, including mine. I've got a story in there. I didn't go into too much detail, but just talks about me hanging out with Mum on the other side after she died, and another friend, all these dead friends and relatives coming to teach me. My teachers. Our teachers don't necessarily have to be just books or people in physical bodies. They can be teachers, just like Bryan was a teacher to the person that murdered him, and teaching him through that experience. You wouldn't think that being murdered would be a way of teaching someone. But then we've got to think of this world differently. It's not all as it seems, like because death is not a reality from the perspective of spirit. It's just flowing through a physical experience and then withdrawing that energy from that experience. But it's like you don't go anywhere as a spirit. You're still there. You're eternal. You are the light. You can't dim the light. Anyway. Lots of love to you. And next year for the Inner Sanctum, I have just organised the beautiful Kate Raymond, who paints angels and does angel readings and messages. Have a look at the show I did with Kate. It's a beautiful show. She's the most beautiful artist. She's going to come in mid-January. I think it's around the 18th, 17th, 18th of January to be our first guest to kick off 2021 with the angels. I said to Kate on the phone last night, I thought we'd kick off 2021 with the angels, because we were thinking February, March, trying to match our schedules. And she said, yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we need to kick off 2021 with the angels. So that'll be beautiful, as she'll be our first guest teacher. And as you know, I'm online every week teaching deliberate creation and helping you share your stories and awaken your spiritual journey. I have many people that join the group that go, I was just interested because I'm interested in your shows. I was just interested in the information. And I remind them, well, there are many groups you can join if you're interested in this information, but my group is about activating you as a new world teacher or a difference maker or a light weaver, someone that knows from your soul's perspective that you have come into this world to help be a part of the shift in human expansion, human potential, human expansion of human consciousness. And how do you play that role? So if you're somebody that feels like you're here to make a difference and you want to discover more about what your role is in the expansion of human consciousness, then join us in the Inner Sanctum, and you've got other people to chat with that are all on the same spiritual journey and doing it in a variety of different ways all over the world. It's a wonderful group. I just love my group. They're amazing. Just love them. Love you big time. I'll be online again before Christmas. I've got one more person to chat with before Christmas, and I don't know if I've got somebody else booked in. I think I'm going to have some time off from the show, but I'll see you all again soon. Big love. Bye for now.